system so that everything's good. So anyhow, so we're looking at the ABCs of Christian maturity. The last letter in the alphabet, Omega. No, I'm just kidding. Last letter in the English alphabet is the letter Z. And so we're looking here at the term or the concept of zeal. Last week it was just an introduction. We want to talk about how it is important to have some zeal. However, it needs to be genuine zeal, and it needs to be zeal about the right things for the right reasons and all of that. So let's look here at the introduction to misdirected zeal. It says, many people are zealous, but for the wrong cause. This is very true. The communists of the 20th century were certainly zealous. Cults such as the Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses are zealous. New Age environmentalists and certain sodomite organizations, for example, are extremely zealous for their wicked causes, and as a result are often successful in achieving their ends. Misdirected zeal, I'm just going to take an aside for just a second here. Misdirected zeal is often shown in many different things. Some people will think that, oh, you know what? They're excited about it. And I'll tell you what, zeal gets stuff done. It does. Even if it's the wrong stuff, it gets stuff done. And one of the things that happens oftentimes, I'm always reminded of this zealous woman that my boss used to talk about. Many years ago, I had a boss that we were doing sales and stuff, and he talked about how this woman, she was out under the bridge down here downtown, and not under the bridge like sleeping or whatever, but she was under the bridge making money. And the way she was doing that is, well, first of all, his job was he's passing out flyers for certain like business or whatever, try to get people to come to the business. And he saw her go up to people. He didn't know exactly what she was doing, but she'd go up to people and she'd have a big smile on her face, a lot of bubbly energy and zeal, and she was really excited about what she was doing, and she was basically panhandling. I mean, she was just a real good panhandler. And she was real excited about it. Hey, you having a good day today? Man, I need $1. Help me out here, or whatever it was. But it was all positive and everything. And anyhow, he said, I noticed that you seem to be a very, very good salesperson. I could probably get you a job here. And she laughed in his face. So I make $60,000 a year doing this. Why would I want a job with you? I would say that's misdirected zeal. Although it's getting something, not that that's the right thing to do, but many examples of misdirected zeal, right? Just because somebody is passionate about something does not mean that their passion is correct. This is exactly true. Many people, maybe I watched the movie. You have to watch it with a filter, even though it kind of has a Christian slant to it. But Unplanned was it? Did we watch that? We watched that together once. Anyhow, it's about a woman who became a Planned Parenthood director of the clinic, and it's her story and all about it. Anyway, so you get to see the zeal from that perspective, the perspective of murdering babies. From their perspective, they thought it was something else, but they had lots of zeal for that. And then you see the other side of the zeal, which you have multiple different groups that oppose abortion, and some of them are really ugly about how they oppose abortion, and some of them are really no nonsense, just right about it. And so anyhow, just because somebody's passionate doesn't mean that zeal is properly directed. So religious zeal is usually extremely passionate and often downright dangerous. Very, very much can be. And by the way, even some good religions, because of their zeal of their rightness, even if they're right, sometimes their zeal becomes pride, and it becomes a problem. But religious zeal, so-called Islamic fundamentalism, is an example, brand of Islam, which actually believes and practices all that the Quran and Hadith teach, is a prime example of misdirected zeal. And we're talking about the extreme side, where you get, jihad and things like that, and suicide bombers and things. That's zealous. That's zeal. It's misdirected, right? And by the way, you can't lump them all together, but that's that zeal. When somebody goes from a simple I believe this to over the top, that's where you get further into the wrong way. So zealous cults like the Branch Davidians, which who's heard of that? Okay, David Koresh. Yeah, y'all remember when that happened? It was before 95. It was either 93 or 94. Might have even been 92. What? Long story. I'll have to discuss it with you at some point. But it's funny that came up because I had just done a little research on that before this study. But anyhow, no. You need to look deeper into the story. But it's in Waco. 1993. Okay, so one of the guys who was part of their group still around, and he kind of explains it or whatever. We'll leave all of the conspiracy and everything out of it. Their religion was wrong. No matter, when I say it was wrong, I mean it's biblically wrong. He had a very, very strong view, and the guy knew the Bible, but knowing the Bible and understanding the Bible are two different things. He knew the Bible, and he had a very sincere belief that he was the Lamb of Revelation chapter number 5, or chapter 4. It is 5, isn't it? That he was the Lamb, and that the basis of their religion was he was the Lamb, and that he was the instrument through which God would open the seals, the 7 seals, and what happened at Waco was the 5th seal, according to him. And he had a whole thing. In fact, you can find his dissertation or partial dissertation on the 7 seals, because he started to write it as part of the negotiation, like argument with the FBI. And now let me say, so on the balance of all of this, the religion was wrong. By the way, the 24 elders. His belief about the 24 elders was that the 24 elders were the children of the Lamb, and that they were from 12 different women who also were married to men who were a part of their religion. And these men were in a vow of celibacy, and the women would bear his children. Crazy and wrong. Sincere, but sincerely wrong. And then on the other side of that, though, we have to balance this. Our federal government had absolutely no business doing what they did there at all. Flat went in shooting at them, and then it became a standoff because, you come to my house shooting at me, I'm going to shoot back. I have a responsibility to protect my family. What's that? Yeah, it was like 3 months. Yeah. So there's a new documentary, which I don't recommend watching without a filter, a good, strong filter. But anyhow, it's from the perspective of the negotiator on the FBI side and the survivor on the other side, on the Davidian side. But anyhow, there was a lot of wrong in that whole thing. Attorney General was wrong. FBI was wrong. ATF was wrong. Branch Davidians were wrong. Everybody was wrong. So anyhow, and then there were some aspects where they were right, where there was a rightful concern for the government. They just handled that concern wrong. And then there was rightful protection from the other side. And then, but the official story is that they burned themselves in a fire to kill themselves, so that it was, the official story was that it became a mass suicide, but that's not what happened at all. It was a mass slaughtering is what it was. But anyhow, nonetheless, everybody was wrong. So there you go. And it was all over, and it was actually on all sides, it was misdirected zeal. Every part of it. You had misdirected zeal on the side of the Branch Davidians. You had misdirected zeal on the ATF. When they showed up, and where it all started, David Koresh comes out and says, "Hey guys, let's just calm down. Let's just calm down. He's unarmed, and there's nobody armed except for the ATF agents, like dozens of them standing there, cars, and I'm just right up there at the front door with, military rifles and everything. But the dogs come out barking, and there's agents standing by the fence. They got spooked and shot the dogs. Well, when they started shooting the people that were inside trying to protect their families, there were 100 people there trying to protect their families, started shooting out the windows back at them. And there you go. Everybody, because of their zeal to do what they thought was right, end up having 94 people die, and no children survived. There were a bunch of kids there, and none of them survived. But anyhow, misdirected zeal. Loss of many innocent lives. So, zeal alone, as the point here says, will not gain salvation. And this is important to note, because it doesn't matter how excited you are about something. If it's just excitement and there's not real heartfelt conviction, there's no real salvation. Many think it doesn't matter what you believe so long as you are sincere or zealous about it. However, let's consider the following examples. The Jews. In Romans chapter 10, verses 1 through 4, let's look here. It says, "Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be saved. For I bear record, I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth." So they have a what? Zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. Part B here says they are ignorant of God's righteousness, and they seek to establish their own righteousness by observing the law of Moses. There, as we see in verse 3, which I just typed it all out twice. So we have the Jews, which had this. Who was I talking to the other day about the Apostle Paul? I was talking to Ronnie. He's at McGregor Road tonight, by the way. So his own testimony shows, what's that? He's usually here because he goes to Regent and then comes here, but because his family was with him, they went out to McGregor Road. So anyhow, Paul's own testimony shows the futility of religious zeal. He was brought up at the feet of the eminent Gamaliel is the name, for they, let's see here. So Acts 22 verse 3 says, "For I am verily a man which am a Jew, born in Tarsus, and a city in Cilicia, yet brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, and taught according to the perfect manner of the law of the fathers, and was zealous toward God, as ye all are this day." So again, he's taught taught according to the perfect manner of the law of the fathers, and what? C, letter C there. Zealous toward God. And then in Galatians chapter 1 and verse number 14, it says, "And profited in the Jews' religion above many my equals in mine own nation, being more exceedingly zealous of the traditions of my fathers." Right? He was very zealous. This is before he got saved. Very, very zealous man. Exceedingly zealous. So zealous that he vehemently concerning Zeal, persecuting, or persecuted here, the church, right? Concerning zeal, persecuting the church, touching righteousness, which is in the law, blameless, right? But after all of this, after he was saved, he wrote, but what things were gain to me, those I counted loss for Christ. Philippians 3:7, right? So recognize that Paul had zeal before he was saved. A lot of people misunderstand Paul or Saul, before he got saved. A lot of people misunderstand him. They think, Saul, he was wicked. He was a bad guy. He killed people. According to Saul's own conscience, before he got saved, he was blameless. Biblically speaking, according to the law, Saul had a responsibility to turn in heretics. It was required in the law that if somebody tried to turn the heart of their brethren in Israel away from their God, they were required to tell on them, to find them out, and to get them prosecuted. It was required. God requires it. Biblically, it was required by the law. They had to do that. And so all he was doing was fulfilling his requirement. But then when he came face to face with Jesus, he realized that he wasn't bringing heretics before the council. He was bringing those who actually had met God before the council. And it changed everything. But it didn't change the fact that he was still zealous. But his zeal was misdirected because he thought that if he just did zealously what he thought was right according to the law, and everything he did was right according to the law, except for one tiny little detail. The Christians weren't trying to turn Israel away from their God. The Christians were trying to turn Israel to their God. And they missed it. And he misread it as heresy. And he was sincere in his own mind and in his own heart, and according to everybody else around him. All of the other Pharisees, all of the rest of the Sanhedrin recognized that he was righteous and he was doing God's work when he was out doing that. See, Saul wasn't evil, but he was wrong. You can be zealous about something and still be wrong. You can feel very strongly about your position and your beliefs and still be wrong. That's why it's important to not trust your feelings about something. You've got to trust what God says, not how I feel about it, or how you feel about it, or how your preacher feels about it, or how that guy on TV or the radio feels about it. What matters is what God says, not how we feel. Because unfortunately, our feelings are often wrong. Now, all that being said, we're going to finish tonight misdirected zeal, but next week we're going to look at directed zeal. We have to still recognize that just because we can't trust our feelings about things and we can't think that we're right just because we're zealous about things, when we're right, we still need we need to be zealous. We just need to have the zeal properly directed by God, which we'll deal with that next week. But who else? The religious wolves, right? These are those who are trying to find some sort of gain, right? In Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 23. Now, let me remind you that Matthew chapter 7 starts out with what? Very beginning of Matthew chapter 7, he says what? It's not up there. What does he start out with? No, Matthew chapter number 7, the very first word is judge. Judge not, that ye be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with what measure you meet, it shall be measured unto you again. That's what that chapter starts with. But as you continue through it, you find that he's not telling us not to judge. He's telling us not to judge in a manner that we would not expect to be judged ourselves, right? But he goes on in that same chapter to say, beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravening wolves. How do we know them? You shall know them by their fruits. How do you know what their fruits are? You have to judge. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth corrupt fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them. Not every one that saith unto me, here's your blanks, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? There's going to be preachers standing before God in that day and say, Lord, I preached your word, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works. Someday, there's going to be people who stand before God and say, look at all this that I did. And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Because they were trusting in what they did to get them into heaven instead of what he did. True salvation is knowing Christ personally. Verse 23. He says, I never knew you. You have to know him. He has to know you. You must know one another personally. Not just know of one another, but know one another. Do you know Jesus today? Do you know him? Does he know you? Right? Letter B here, the second part of this, misdirected zeal. Believers can be zealously caught up in the wrong things. By the way, we'll get there. We'll get there. That's good. Believers can be zealously caught up in the wrong things. Many Galatians were zealous for false doctrine. Galatians 4:17 says, they zealously affect you, but not well. Yea, they would exclude you that you might affect them. Having been saved from the law's penalty, they were turned again to its weak and beggarly elements. Right? He says, but now after that ye have known God, or rather are known of God, now how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements, whereunto ye desire again to be in bondage? They got zealous about something, but it was the wrong thing. So they turned again to its weak and beggarly elements and to its bondage, right? Then letter C here, they began to observing days and months and times and years. Right? Y'all know what that means. They got in the newspaper and read their horoscope. Actually, it does have a little bit to do with that. So let's say this. Let's just we'll park there for just a second. Not too long, but just a second. So observing days and months and times and years. What was the problem with the Galatians there? They continued to observe the holy days, right? The days that they would observe would be like Passover, right? They would observe, Yom Kippur. They would observe all of these things. And then what they did was they tried to tie that into their Christianity. You guys need to observe these things or you're not saved. What do we call those people today? Yeah, a general term maybe would be legalist, but there's an actual branch of Christianity that would better be named Galatianism. Called Messianic Jews. Messianic Jews. Yeah. Not Orthodox. Messianic Jews. Messianic Jews are those who practice Judaism with Christianity and put them together. Now, I have no problem with just to know what it would be like observing Passover once. Something like that. It's like looking into it. What would it be like to spend a month looking for all of the leaven in your house, and then ridding your house of everything non-kosher, and then not eating anything non-kosher for Passover for a whole week. Not to say that you need to do that, just saying that I don't see a problem with seeing what it would be like, but when it becomes a part of your Christianity, now you have a problem. You're observing days. Now, some people take this real far and they say, oh, no, means you can't celebrate birthdays, can't celebrate holidays, or any of that. I say, hey, celebrate what you want to celebrate as long as it doesn't become a part of why you're saved, right? My family celebrates Christmas. Oh, no. I know that some folks on Facebook may have a big problem with that. We celebrate it in December, too. I can't do that breathing in thing again or I'll start coughing at you. But why? Why do we do that? I believe that that's when Jesus was born. And I believe that it's perfectly fine to recognize that. Now, the whole gift thing and all that, meh. But whatever. But it's not a part of, like, if I don't observe it, or if I do observe it, it doesn't make me a Christian or not make me a Christian. I'm not worried about that, right? But days and months, y'all know that it was a common thing. When the new moon would happen, it would be a celebration of the new month, right? This was in Israel. This was a Jewish thing, and that's what would happen. And then times would be, like the seasons, right? Like the harvest festivals and things like that, right? And I'm not against harvest festivals. I'm not against, and for them, harvest festival was kind of like the ingathering, right? And so they'd have the ingathering, but it was a cultural thing that was a part of Jewish culture. But they tried to make it a part of Christianity, to make it a tenet of Christianity or requirement in Christianity. And that's wrong. As zealous as you may be about it, it's not right to make certain things. Hey, we eat pizza on Sunday nights. But if we start looking at other people that don't eat pizza on Sunday nights and say, you must not be real Baptists. I know a lot of Baptists that eat pizza on Sunday nights. It's a good tradition. I don't see any problems with it unless it becomes like a tenet of your faith. By the way, I don't believe you have to have fellowships to be a Baptist either. But it sure is fun. Sure is a good time. What we do, first thing we did when we got to the church building today, we ate pizza. Not because pizza's like anything. It's just that was easy to get, so that's what we had. So eat something. I'm fine with that. But take it or leave it. It's not changing my Christianity. Not changing whether or not I'm right with God, right? But if you go to the steakhouse and you order a sirloin instead of a ribeye, you might want to check to see if you're right with God. No, I'm just kidding. Picking on Brother Wilhelm there. Just kidding. So many Corinthians were zealous in showing off their presumed spirituality, right? 1 Corinthians 14. Oh, wait a minute. 13, 1 through 3. Where's that at? I guess I skipped 14:12. overview of it, right? Okay. So what's 14:12 say? Some things. Uh-huh. 1 Corinthians 14:12. I'll read it since you're not going to. 1 Corinthians 14:12 here says, even so ye, for as much as ye are zealous of spiritual gifts, seek that ye may excel to the edifying of the church. They were zealous of showing off their presumed spirituality. Say, hey, look at me! I'm spiritual because I can blah, 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 blah. Right? I can talk where you don't understand me. Hey, by the way, even some Baptists misdirect their zeal when they speak so high in their spiritual talk that nobody else can understand them, and so they feel so important and so spiritual because I can say words you don't know. That's why I still speak hillbilly, because I'm not trying to be that, right? I'm the hillbilly doctor. Amen. Make a whole TV show about that. Anyways, they were more concerned about showing others how spiritual they were than being a blessing to them, right? So, hey, let me show you how right I am, how spiritual I am. Or maybe let me just show you how to be. Let me try to be a blessing to you, right? To exercise any spiritual gift without charity is vanity, right? Because the Bible says, though I speak with the tongues of men and angels and have not charity, I am become as sounding brass or as a tinkling cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge and have all faith, so that I could remove mountains and have not charity, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, we usually call that charity, don't we? Well, the Bible says you can do that and still not have charity. And though I give my body to be burned and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. You see, because charity comes from doing what you're doing for the benefit of another, not for your own glory. Right? And so, real Christian love does not vaunt itself, right? Verse number 4. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself. It is not puffed up, right? It does not vaunt itself. The purpose for spiritual gifts is to edify the church. 1 Corinthians 14:12, which we didn't type earlier, but we have it here now. For as much, even so ye, for as much as ye are zealous of spiritual gifts, seek that ye may excel to the edifying of the church. It's for edification, not to brag about. Right? So, believers can be zealously caught up in the wrong things. Believers can be wrongfully zealous in the right things. What? Wrongfully zealous in the right things. I've got a little bit to say about this, but we're going to read what he says here, and then I'll try to tie in some of the stuff that I have to say. So, in seeking to defend his master, Peter drew his sword and was prepared to fight off a large group of armed men. John chapter 18, verse 10. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and smote the high priest's servant and cut off his ear. The servant's name was Malchus. And Jesus rebuked this kind of zeal, because he was zealous about the right thing at the wrong time. At that time, Jesus needed to be arrested and crucified. So his zeal for the right thing, protecting his master or protecting his loved ones, was misdirected because it was the wrong time. Sometimes it's wrong to do some things like that, right? Sometimes it's the will of God to go through persecution, right? It's important to be in tune with God, to know when it's right to defend and when it's right to let it happen, to be abused, or murdered, right? There are some times when it's right to just let evil workers do their evil work. Hard to know when, right? But we also balance that with the fact that we do have a responsibility to defend and protect those that we love, right? Um, we have to be careful where our zeal is directed. Christians may be zealous in their liberty to the detriment of a weak brother, right? Let's look at that here. 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 9 through 13. But take heed lest by any means, lest by any means this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to them that are weak. For if any man see thee which hast knowledge sit at meat in the idol's temple, shall not the conscience of him which is weak be emboldened to eat those things which are offered to idols? And through thy knowledge shall the weak brother perish for whom Christ died? But when ye sin so against the brethren, and wound their weak conscience, ye sin against Christ. Wherefore, if meat make my brother to offend, I will eat no flesh, while the world standeth, lest I make my brother to offend. That's some pretty strong stuff right there. Sometimes we get more zealous about our liberty than we do about our responsibility to keep from causing our brother to stumble. We rather should be more concerned or more zealous about our responsibility than our liberty. Hey, liberty's great, but it needs to be properly directed. Zeal for Christ must never cause us to do wrong, even if it is to accomplish right. As one wise man said, it is never right to do wrong in order to do right. It's not. It's never. In order to do right. You have to play that out. It's never right for you to do wrong so that something right will happen. Right? But yeah, the end does not justify your means, or the way you get to the end, right? It's like, well, as long as the end result happens, it really doesn't matter how I get there. No, it absolutely does matter how you get there. You're going to have to answer to God for everything you did in between and all along the way. We must always strive lawfully, right? It says, and if a man also strive for masteries, yet is he not crowned, except he strive lawfully. We must strive lawfully. Some areas in which misguided zeal usually does more harm than good. I have more than just two here, but the two that he has is high pressure evangelism, getting people to pray a prayer and they're not ready. A zeal to check off a box or have a number is not good. Now, is it good to want people to get saved? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's good to want people to get saved. But you have to make sure there's real conviction. You have to make sure that they're ready. You got to make sure they understand, right? Another thing that people are really zealous about sometimes is confronting others about their faults. Yes, we have a responsibility to help one another, especially if a brother's in danger of getting himself into some bad trouble. We have a responsibility to look out for him and help him out, right? But we don't have a responsibility to correct every wrong. Somebody misspeaks and says something wrong. It's not always our responsibility to say, well, that was wrong. You should have said this. Right? Now, is it wrong to do that once in a while? Or, help somebody to more clearly understand things? No, you just need to be careful that you don't become overzealous in that. Now, I will say that there are some causes that are right causes, but Christians sometimes get overzealous about those causes and underzealous about the primary causes. I'll give you an example. I am 100% against abortion, but you will rarely find me standing outside of an abortion mill for the purpose of stopping abortions. Some people would say that I'm not right with God because of that. But I would say that it is more important for me to focus on the Great Commission than it is for me to focus on any other mission. It's a good cause, and we ought to stop the murdering of babies. But we should never do it to the detriment of the Great Commission. Not against praying that the Lord will shut them all down. Let's do that. I'm not against praying that we that God would move on hearts of people and keep them from going. I'm not against people being out there. We just have to make sure that we're doing what God's called us to do. And by the way, you say, well, God's called me to that ministry. Well, no, God has called you specifically to the ministry of soul winning and discipleship first before anything else. Every Christian, when Jesus left, the last things he said, there's several different iterations of it, but every one of them has to do with reaching the lost and then discipling them and, joining them to a local church. Every one of them, right? Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel. Go in all the world and teach all nations, right? Baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. Teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you, right? You have gospel, discipleship. Now, good causes can go along with discipleship. They can. But sometimes the zeal for the good cause overbalances it becomes overzealous, and you're spending more time on the good cause than you are on the mission, the commission that you're given, right? So I'm not against those. I'm not against those that do it. But what else do we get overzealous about good things? We mentioned this last week. We talked about exercise sometimes. Y'all know I'm not overzealous about that. I'm going to try to get back to it when the gym opens back up. But got an email this afternoon saying that we're going to get another email saying when things are going to open back up soon. So that's good. But you can be overzealous about that, right? You can be overzealous about what else? We mentioned jobs, businesses, jobs, success. We can be overzealous about that. And I'll tell you what, sports, yeah. If we're anything, honestly, that's the fact is, anything that we're more zealous about than the Lord Jesus, our relationship with Him, our service to Him in the Great Commission, those two things, our relationship with Him, our service to Him in the Great Commission, which the Great Commission involves three things, right? Getting people saved, getting them in the church, and training them, right? But those two major things, relationship with the Lord and our service to the Lord, for the Lord. If there's anything more important than that in our life, or anything that takes the time or the attention that it deserves, then that other thing is an idol. It has become our God because our relationship with God is less important than that. And it should be changed. Our zeal should always be focused on that which is right. Should always be focused on the primary things, right? As we look at directed zeal, we're going to look at being zealous for the Word of God, zealous in prayer, zealous over the house of God, zealous for the Great Commission, zealous for good works, zealous toward the saints, zealous for church purity, all of those things. And if we get through all of those things next week, we will be done with the ABCs of Christian maturity. But we will not get through all those things next week. I don't think, anyways. Any questions or comments on this so far? Or thoughts? Still going to have an altar call here in just a minute, but any questions or comments on